You're listening to an Ono Media podcast.
Good morning, and thanks for joining me for Rise in Crime, your morning caffeine hit all about crime. I'm Mama Jules, and I've been waiting to update you on the Samantha Woll murder trial, because Samantha was murdered inside her Detroit home on October 21st of 2023. And when her trial started at the beginning of June, it was expected to last about 3 to 4 weeks. Well, that was a miscalculation, because here we are, nearly 6 weeks in, and we've got a jury that was deadlocked. So let's jump in and tell you how Samantha ended up bloodied and lifeless, laying in her front yard, and how one man is on trial despite another man confessing to the crime. Okay, Samantha, or Sam Woll, was a 40-year-old woman who was dedicated to her faith and to her career. She grew up in the Detroit area and attended college at the University of Michigan, go Wolverines. And as an Orthodox Jew, she centered her career and life around her religion. She was the founder of the Muslim Jewish Forum in Detroit. Now, this came about following the 2015 Paris attacks on Jewish people, and she dedicated this work to uniting Muslim and Jewish people, and specifically high school students, through an essay and art contest that was held each year in conjunction with the Greater Detroit Muslim Jewish Solidarity Council. Now, in 2017, Sam served on Detroit's Jewish Community Relations Council. It was on their board of directors, and she eventually became the AGC's Access Detroit Young Leadership Program co-chair. Now, that same year, she was selected by the Detroit Jewish News as one of their 36 under 36. She was truly making a name for herself. And she was also active politically. She, for 2 years, worked as deputy district director on the political campaign of Congresswoman Elisa Slotkin. She also worked on the re-election campaign of Attorney General Dana Nessel. And then, just over a year before her death, she was named as the president of the Isaac Agree Downtown Synagogue. All right, so I'm not Jewish, and I know we have Jewish listeners who are familiar with the Isaac Agree Downtown Synagogue, but I'm not. And so for me and those who aren't, here's what her job looks like. This Jewish synagogue was founded back in 1921, and it's gone through several iterations since then. The most recent occurred in 2022 when the building that houses the synagogue underwent a $5 million renovation project. New offices were built for the 5 full-time staff members, and in August of 2023, just 2 months before Samantha was murdered, the building reopened with new areas to house several local Jewish nonprofit organizations, as well as a community gathering space and a newly renovated sanctuary. The synagogue services about 425 families, and Sam had never married but was adored by her parents, Dr. Margot Woll and Dr. Douglas Woll. And she was also adored by her 2 nephews and her niece. She fiercely loved the city of Detroit, and her life's work consisted of making the area safer and stronger and more vibrant. On the night of October 21st, Sam had attended her friend's wedding, which meant a late night when she returned to her Lafayette Park home. Her ADT alarm system recorded that Sam entered her house at 12:30 a.m. About a half hour later, she sent a heart emoji to a friend, which seems to be her last communication, at least via her cell. She did unlock her phone at 1:29 a.m. and then again at 1:35 a.m. Her ADT alarm system had a sensor in her living room, and that sensor detected motion at 12:32 a.m. All right, all of this checks out. That sensor in the living room, that was about the time she came home. Now, her sensor on her back door to her home indicated the door opened briefly and closed again about 12:35 a.m. Okay, that also checks out. But here's where it gets weird. The sensor on her front door was activated at 1:01 a.m., and then the door was never closed again. Someone outside of the home said at about 1:30 a.m., a woman was heard speaking very loudly inside Sam's home. Now, she did unlock her phone during this time, so it is possible she was talking with someone maybe via an app that hasn't been discovered on her phone. But even this gets a little weird, because that ear witness goes on to change his statement As time went on, the witness thought maybe it wasn't 12:30 and that his time frames were wrong about when he went outside to walk his dogs and when he returned to his home and fell asleep. So the ear witness might just be a little sketchy. Now, the ADT living room sensor was triggered again at 4:20 a.m. All right, remember, the front door seems to still be open. That sensor only remained active for 2 minutes before going idle again. That means movement was not detected in the living room after that 2-minute time frame. All right, somewhere through all those timestamps that I relayed, Sam was attacked. She was stabbed 8 times in the head and neck. She suffered vicious hits to her face and body. Blood in the home indicated the attack was not centralized and that it moved from room to room. However, the highest concentration of blood was in the hallway that leads to the open front door. Pooling blood was discovered there, which kind of led investigators to believe she might have laid there for an extended amount of time following the attack. Now, at some point, it seems Sam staggered through that open front door and collapsed on her front lawn. Now, we have movement for 2 minutes in the living room at 4:20 a.m. At 6:30 a.m., Sam's neighbor, Kevin, takes his friend's dog for a walk. And that's when he discovered the lifeless body of Sam Woll laying on the lawn of her townhome. She was barefoot and bloody, laying in the fetal position, and her skin was bluish in color. Kevin reached down and touched Sam, but recoiled when her skin was cold beneath his fingers. Kevin told investigators that he wasn't even sure it was a human body at first. He knew that what he was seeing was peculiar, and that as he got closer, he realized it was a body that was badly beaten. When detectives arrived on scene and searched the townhome, they found a black jacket that didn't seem to be Sam's. As news of the murder broke, people immediately jumped to the concept of a hate crime, and investigators pursued those leads along with others. They began testing evidence within her home and also on that black jacket. We all know investigative work takes time, and despite people wanting answers about the crime, especially those in the Jewish community, well, the case wasn't moving anywhere quickly until a little more than 2 weeks after the crime. That's when Sam's ex-boyfriend, Jeff Erbstman, suddenly confessed to the murder. But it was kind of a quasi-confession, and here's why I say that. He told police in a November 7th interview that he had convinced himself that he had killed Sam. He said he couldn't really give them details or even articulate a reason for the murder, but he thought in his head he had done it. But this wasn't a calm, hey, let's sit down and have a chat confession. This was Jeff calling the authorities while he was in the middle of a full-blown panic attack. During that attack, Jeff called cops on his cell and said he felt like he had killed Sam. Now, according to investigators, they did a full and thorough investigation of Jeff, but things weren't adding up. First off, his cell phone data indicated that his phone was active and at home the entire night of the murder. Now, Jeff was also not spotted in any camera footage near the home or at the home on the night of the murder. Jeff was detained by authorities for 5 days, but was released because his claim just wasn't adding up. Now, law enforcement was not at a dead end. They were still heavily investigating a man that was seen in surveillance footage outside of Sam's home. That man, 29-year-old Michael Jackson-Balanos, was spotted in a black jacket, like the one found in Sam's home. Now, in several different videos throughout the Lafayette Park area, he can be seen walking in that black jacket. He was also seen walking from Midtown to an area adjacent to Sam's neighborhood. Now, on all those various videos, Michael is seen tampering with cars, as well as stealing a white bag from a car. Okay, it's important to understand that he was walking alone during all of those various videos that were captured. And just having Michael in the vicinity wasn't enough, even if he was caught participating in criminal activity. Well, that's when investigators turned to T-Mobile for help. They asked the company to find phones that had the data that matched the trajectory of a person they saw tampering with cars in Sam's parking area to her townhome. Okay, AKA Michael, but they can't specifically ask for Michael's data, so they created like this Discovery Channel and said, hey, can you search for it? Because they can only search general data. And then they can tie that general data to Michael. Okay, that's when they discovered that Michael's phone matched the trajectory of the person walking. All right, so the next most natural thing happened. Police brought Michael in for questioning. And during that time, he gave 4 different versions of what he had done on the night that Sam was killed. He initially said he was innocent and hadn't done anything. Then when presented with the surveillance video footage of him tampering with cars, he changed his story to say he was taking photos of cars for other people to steal. Now, investigators weren't thrilled with his explanations, but they had other avenues to traverse. There's the black jacket. Now, blood was found on that jacket and tested. According to prosecutors, that blood testing revealed that it was, quote, astronomically high odds that the blood belonged to Sam. So the black jacket is in the house, it has Sam's blood on it, and it looks like the jacket that Michael was wearing. And they believe it's that North Face jacket, and they have video of him wearing that jacket, but that is still not strong enough evidence. Now, Michael did admit something, though. He told investigators that during his walking through the Lafayette Park neighborhood, he did see Sam dead on her front lawn. He even admitted to walking up to the body and touching Sam to see if she was alive. Michael said when he realized she was dead, he walked away. Now, that was a no-go for police, and Michael was arrested and charged with the first-degree murder of Sam Woll. Michael was also charged with home invasion and lying to police. When the trial began in early June, most people would have bet that Michael would not take the stand and testify in his own defense, and they would have been wrong. Michael spent 2 days on the stand telling jurors that he did not have anything to do with the crime and that police have the wrong man. While testifying, he did admit that he touched the dead body of Sam Woll, but he fled the scene fearing that he would be blamed for her murder. He said he had concluded quickly that a black man should not be seen anywhere near a dead white woman. He also admitted he didn't call 911 and he didn't just touch her, but that he checked her neck for a pulse. So there's more contact than just barely feeling to see if she's warm. Now, when Michael was cross-examined, prosecutors asked him if he would be surprised to learn that investigators counted as many as 40 lies that he told during the interview process, where he changed his story 4 times. Michael said he wasn't surprised by that at all. He turned the question around on the prosecutor and stated, "You tried being accused of going and killing somebody." Now, he also declared during his testimony that one thing never changed. He always said he did not do the crime. He said the following while on the stand: "I'm here today as a sworn and affirmed witness to tell the truth. I may have lied in the past, but today I'm telling the truth." Now, one of the sticking points in the trial has been that the time frames just don't work out for Michael to be the killer. Remember the time frames I gave you that indicate when the ADT sensors were activated. Prosecutors contend that Michael killed Sam at 4:20 a.m. But that's a 2-minute window if the ADT sensors are correct. So they are saying that Michael entered through the open front door, stabbed Sam 8 times, that blood evidence is left in multiple rooms, and that he exited within 2 minutes. Michael's attorney also contends that other potential suspects weren't fully vetted, including the ex-boyfriend, Jeff. Michael's lawyers say that the phone could have been left at Jeff's house while he committed the murder. Well, jurors got the case on Wednesday, July 10th. And by Tuesday, July 15th, jurors were deadlocked. But the fact jurors couldn't come to a conclusion was not the only snag that the case incurred. Jurors restarted their deliberations after 3 days of deadlocked debates when juror number 3 was replaced. Okay, so what happened? That juror was excused because of a pre-planned vacation. Now, an alternate juror stepped in. And you guys, it really isn't that crazy. The trial has taken much longer than expected, and this vacation wasn't expected to be a hiccup in this case. Now, the judge also addressed the facts that the jury was finding a resolution difficult. Jurors also had to take last Wednesday off due to one of the jurors having a childcare snag. Again, childcare was probably established for about 4 weeks, but this trial has taken longer than that. So now those childcare snags are happening. All right. Full deliberations started again on Thursday. But some jurors had indicated to the judge that they didn't feel like they could reach a decision. And then, shocking most people, the jury returned with a not guilty verdict Thursday afternoon for the first-degree murder charge. And on the other charges, the jury remained deadlocked. So where does that leave prosecutors? They cannot take Michael back to trial for the first-degree murder charge. They'll need to decide by next week whether they will retry the case against Michael for the deadlock counts of home invasion and felony murder. Now, Michael's lawyer expressed frustration with the verdict, which is kind of weird, right? You think he'd be happy because obviously his client is not being charged with first-degree murder anymore. But here's what he said. I think they should have acquitted him on everything. Well, he then went on to say he expected victory, but not this way. And the jury said they have been deadlocked on 3 different occasions. That leaves us pretty much in a conundrum. But I want to leave you with this. Sam's sister said the following about Sam. Your soul was beautiful and pure. You loved with all your heart. You never said no, but instead said, how can I help you? You so deeply wanted peace for this world. You fought for everyone, regardless of who they were or where they came from. You were the definition of a leader. Our world is shattered without you. Now, you guys, I'll keep you updated if the prosecutors choose to move forward with another trial. And now to this story out of Australia, where prosecutors in Queensland have charged parents of an 8-year-old girl with murder. But this death is unusual. Now, we have to go back to July of 2019 when 8-year-old Elizabeth Strews was admitted to the Queensland hospital. Senior pediatric endocrinologist Louise Conwell told The Guardian that Elizabeth was the most seriously unwell child that suffered from diabetes that she had ever seen in her 20-year career. Now, that physician contests the child was minutes from death when she was admitted. Not only was she in severe diabetic ketoacidosis, but she was also extremely emaciated. Elizabeth was intubated and admitted to the pediatric ICU. With skilled care, Elizabeth did make a full recovery. Her diabetes was back in control, and she started to gain weight under the care of the doctors and nurses. But things went seriously wrong when Elizabeth was handed back over to the care of her parents, Carrie and Jason Strews. The decline in Elizabeth's health seems to be linked to Carrie and Jason's religious beliefs. The two belong to a religious sect known as the Saints. Religious teachings within this sect prophesy that God would heal Elizabeth of her diabetes, or if she died, the group or the members of the community could raise her from the dead. But for God's hand to work, the parents needed to suspend any medical care, including returning to the hospital if Elizabeth again entered diabetic ketoacidosis. All right, being true to their faith, the parents stopped administering insulin to Elizabeth, and her health slowly degraded. 2 years later, after her extended ICU visit at Queensland Hospital, Elizabeth was found dead in her family's Rangeville home. Now, the parents aren't equally engaged in the religion. It seems Jason kind of dabbles in the beliefs with his wife, but Carrie is fully entrenched in the religion. Their 21-year-old son is also a member of this religious sect. Now, I don't know if you go to church, but I do, and I typically have about maybe 150 people to 200 people worshiping with me on Sundays. And that's just my little organized group that belongs to a much larger overall religion. In this sect, there is just 14 people. And I've already introduced you to 3 of them, Zachary, Carrie, and Jason. The leader of the group is Brendan Stevens. Through his teachings, Carrie and Jason were told that God wanted to heal Elizabeth and that Carrie and Jason needed to stop administering medication in order for God to perform his will. So now we're down to 10 people, and most of those 10 are related to Brendan, the leader. In fact, only 3 of the remaining 10 are not related. And you're probably wondering how Elizabeth was even returned to the care of her parents following that near-death hospital stay. Well, police did intervene back then. They tried Carrie for child endangerment, and she was found guilty of failing to supply the necessities of life for Elizabeth. She was jailed for only 5 months before returning to care for Elizabeth. During her trial, Jason, okay, that's the dad and the husband, well, he actually testified against his wife. But once she went to jail, he started to flounder, and instead of dabbling in the religion, he jumped in head first, hoping they could buoy him during his wife's absence. Now, it's been reported in Australian news sources that Jason wasn't really on board when it came to withholding the insulin, but he also felt like his family would leave him if he didn't comply with the religious teachings. Well, finally on Monday, January 3rd of 2022, the couple jointly decided to completely withdraw Elizabeth's insulin in order to comply with the religious demands of the saints. By Tuesday, so just 24 hours later, Elizabeth began vomiting after every meal, and she was lethargic. She needed help just visiting the restroom, and even with the help, she was having accidents. Now, 2 days later, on Thursday, Elizabeth is still alive, but she's mostly unconscious. She did not speak the entire day. During the night between Thursday and Friday, Elizabeth quietly died. Her parents discovered her lifeless body on Friday morning. Investigators obtained text messages shared between the members of the religious community. In those texts, Carrie seems to be wringing her hands over the fact that Jason will not withdraw the medication. Other members of the group are encouraging both Carrie and Jason to obey the commands of God. Now, Brendan, the leader, he allegedly sends a text reading, quote, "God has it all in hand and Elizabeth is healed." Then in another text from Brendan, he states that God shall prevail and Jason shall not prevail. Now, these texts were exchanged just prior to Elizabeth's death. Following the death investigation, the prosecution took the bold move of charging all members of the sect with Elizabeth's murder, and they are all currently on trial in Australia. Now, there's no jury, only a judge will decide their fate. And so far during the trial, much of the resulting actions from Elizabeth's 2019 near-fatal hospital stay have been presented. Witnesses explain that following that hospital stay, Jason attended 9 different education sessions where he was taught how to deal with type 1 diabetes. Those sessions included administering the drugs that Elizabeth needed and also extended learning from a dietitian to improve Elizabeth's quality of life. Family members of the 14 who aren't involved in the religious sect reference the religion as a cult during their testimonies. They also testified that they tried to warn the members of the dangerous beliefs. Now, the prosecution is expected to call about 50 witnesses, and they are going to play over 70 hours of phone conversations between the 14 defendants. Now, there's one thing to note. The charges for the 14 are not all the same. Jason and Brendan have been charged with murder by reckless indifference. The remaining dozen have all been charged with manslaughter. Can you guys even imagine what this courtroom looks like? Finding space for 14 defendants? Now, I wish I could tell you more about Elizabeth. It's like the only identifier of this sweet little girl is the fact that she had diabetes, and that just saddens me. She deserved to be nurtured and not neglected. I'll keep you posted on this most unusual trial. And I'm ending today's episode with such a sad update to a case I have covered 3 different times. Those 3 times, they were over just the last few months. Now, you might remember this. Corpus Christi police have confirmed that the human remains found at the wastewater station near Ennis-Jocelyn Road in Corpus Christi, well, those remains are most likely those of Caleb Harris. So here's your quick reminder. Caleb disappeared in the early morning hours of March 4th after he sent a Snapchat to his friend as he crossed a bridge near his apartment. Indications are his phone died shortly after that Snapchat, or it could have possibly been turned off. He was discovered missing when his roommate noticed his food order had been delivered in the middle of the night, but it hadn't been retrieved from the area in front of the apartment door. Now, multiple searches were conducted for Caleb, and his family insisted that he would not willingly leave. Caleb's dad announced on social media that he and his family have heavy hearts. He said they will grieve their son, but they have peace knowing that Caleb has returned to his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He then encouraged anyone who couldn't find peace in Jesus to reach out to him, saying he loves to talk about Jesus and that he knows that he can support anyone during these kinds of tragic times. He also thanked people, those he knows and those he doesn't, for the many prayers offered in Caleb's behalf. Oh, I so wish the outcome was different. And I know there is going to be more about this story as it develops and as details come out. I will make sure I let you know. All right, that's your Monday episode of Rise in Crime. You guys, thanks so much for joining me here. I love being a part of your day. A big reminder, please like and share this podcast. You can tell a friend. You can, like I said, like the podcast or give a 5-star review and leave a positive comment. All of those things help us grow. There's also a couple of other podcasts with Ono Media. There is Into the Dark with Peyton Moreland and Murder with My Husband with Peyton Moreland and Garrett Moreland. Join me again on Thursday for more morning crime news. I'm Mama Jules, and keep safe out there.